Lost my apartment, lost the business, lost the team, minus 200K. And then I had a relationship breakup. And that was the thing that was like, okay, full rock bottom, dark night of the soul type stuff. I was not honoring how I was feeling and instead pretending that everything was okay. If you're always fearing, if I say the wrong thing, if I show the wrong part of myself, if I make a mistake, she's going to leave me, then you can never be authentic.
In this episode, I sit down with Daniel Holloway for a grounded conversation about identity, self-worth, and what happens when the life you built starts to fall apart. We explore the impact of parental divorce, building and losing a business, and the emotional weight of hitting rock bottom. From shame and abandonment to vulnerability, journaling, and healthy relationships, this episode looks at the uncomfortable work of becoming authentic after everything collapses. If you found value in this one, support the mission. Please kindly subscribe and leave a review. It helps the show grow, and it means that we can reach more men who are navigating their journey. Thank you so much. I'm Harrison, and this is the Growth Voyage podcast. Enjoy. Straight is the man. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you, mate.
Yeah, most welcome. There's lots of avenues we can explore with your story. It's going to be quite fun because I don't actually know too much about it. You did mention that your parents got divorced at the age of 7, and that immediately stuck out to me because my parents divorced when I was 6. And
Oh, shit.
yes, and it's only over the last couple of years or so I've really reflected on how much that actually impacted myself. So I'd love to hear how that shaped you into the man that you are today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I think it's a lot of the time that you go through life and you have a theme that sort of repeats itself again and again and again, right? And there has been themes that have come off of that event personally, in business and relationships. And I'd say, so in terms of how it's impacted me, it's impacted me again and again and again at various different points on the life journey. So like, to give you an example, I went through a very challenging time in 2023, and my business prior to that, from 2016 through to 2022, it was very successful. Things were going very well. I was living the whole digital nomad life of freedom, 6-figure months, team of 11 at the peak. And post COVID, I didn't pivot quickly enough, and honestly, I kind of lost my heart for what I was doing. So, long story short, business ended up going under. We were just leading revenue and cash flow every single month, and it got to the point where I ended up minus 200K, and I just had to I couldn't run out of money. I couldn't do anything more. So I had to close things down. And that was the start of an incredibly difficult year because I really needed to come face to face with so many things in myself that I guess hadn't really properly faced at the times that it had come up before. I kind of dabbled on the surface and, thought I'd worked on that area, and it turned out that really I hadn't gone to the depth that I needed to be free of some of the patterns. And honestly, I probably still have, it's probably more layers to go through. But what ended up happening is, lost everything. So lost my apartment, lost the business, lost the team, minus 200K, lost the car. I had a Porsche, which I just enjoyed so much. And that was the end of a chapter. I had to sell the Porsche. And I know it's such a cliche first world problem. Oh no, he had to sell his Porsche, but it was kind of this, it was a sign that chapter was ended. And I had to let go and move on. And then I had a relationship breakup. And that was the thing that was okay, full rock bottom, dark night of the soul type stuff. So when you ask the question of, how did parents' divorce shape me? Some of the themes that ended up coming up out of that rock bottom period ended up being focused around, abandonment, shame, having to learn to, accept myself for who I am in all aspects of myself, and really having to face things that I hadn't faced since being a little kid. And that's really what led me to Bali. Is going through this period of I need to, figure some stuff out. I need to look within myself. I need to reset. And, that was the trigger, I think, that caused me to go into that stuff in a lot more detail, you know?
Mm. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because again, we adopt these patterns when we're young, and
Yeah.
they're never really explored until we have that rock bottom moment, that wake up call. It always happens. And in your story, it sounds like you'd built a lot of momentum, right? You had this sense of maybe pride, perhaps you didn't quite have that before. Again, just presuming stuff here, but I can only relate it to my experience where, because I had quite a low self-esteem as a kid and there was quite a lot going on, what ended up happening was anything that I could attach a form of validation to, I would. So anything in the external world that I thought, oh, that gives me value, I'm going to adopt that. Is that what happened with yourself then? Because it's quite easy, I think, to take that on, especially because also it sounds like it was successful, right? What you started up there, and not to mention being in a relationship as well, there is a sense of, I say accomplishment there, but it's more of a sense of, yeah, like I am loved, you know, so I've got this girl in my life who appreciates me. I've got this role that I'm excelling in. So do you think that was all tied to external validation, and was it a surface level cover for something much deeper? And how did you learn that at the time? Because I think it's very easy for us to just think, yeah, like I'm just doing well. This isn't tied to external validation. And our mind's very good at justifying whatever it is in our life. So talk me through that process, your perception of your life then versus after the stuff started being pulled away from you.
Yeah. Yeah, mate, that's incredibly relatable. And for sure, I pinned a lot of success, a lot of business success into my identity. And so one of the things that hit me really hard, and I honestly didn't realize quite how hard it hit me until, got into 2024. It was like a full year later, I started realizing, okay, that was actually way of a bigger hit than I thought it was, because as you said, so much of who I made myself to be, who I perceived myself as, was flaked into, I am worth this much. I get these kind of results in business. I am this level of successful, and so on and so forth. And so losing all of that, I was in a state of denial for quite a while. I was like, yeah, look, it is what it is, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to make it back, and positive mindset. I'm going to keep going forwards, keep pushing. It's just a hard time. Every entrepreneur has challenges, yada, yada, yada. Which again, I believe, but it was a way of me preventing myself from facing what I needed to look at, which again, you've hit the nail on the head. That was, I didn't believe that I was enough, which is why I made it so important for me to have those exterior results. And when I let all of the stories go and just came face to face with this truth, this realization, which again, said it's baked into self-esteem, it's baked into self-worth. And I had to really look at myself and go, why do I believe that I need all of these things to justify my worth? What is it that I'm not giving myself? What is the story that's running the show subconsciously that's causing me to essentially believe that I need those things to be, to be worthwhile, to be valuable, and so on and so forth. And I wouldn't have been forced to look at myself through that lens if I hadn't gone through full destruction of, business and life and everything that I was using to, to justify my worth. And then in doing that, and coming face to face with those things, which was incredibly painful and, incredibly challenging. But that led me on a path of really realizing what my worth truly is, aside from money and material success and, relational success and whatever. So yeah, exactly what you're saying, mate. Incredibly relatable, and absolutely, that was a major part of my, let's call it, discovery of self-worth, is losing those things that I was telling myself that's what made me worthwhile subconsciously.
And I imagine because you haven't reached that rock bottom moment, or you hadn't reached that rock bottom moment previously, you can still keep on fighting it. You can still keep going, still keep hustling and going. And it's only until you've got no evidence, you can't even string into a little bit of evidence that you've got your shit together. I think that's where you just can let go a bit. And then that's where I think when you're faced with reality, it's like, okay, I can't even pretend like everything's okay. And you stop lying to yourself, which of course now we can look back on, and it can be a bit of a blessing because it then starts the next chapter of our life. But I'm really keen to delve into the messy bit now?
Mm.
Because very often, if someone met you now, you look like a very calm guy, got his stuff together. But a lot of people see the finished picture. So tell me
Yeah.
about like that moment there. Where did you start? Did you have a support system in place?
Mm.
What was your first go-to when you realized what your situation was?
Mm. So one of my things from going through parents' divorce was that I'm independent. I can look after myself. I don't need anyone else. And again, it's relatable. I can relate to that. Yeah. Right. So going through these kind of hard times, my natural response is like to go into the man cave and be like, I don't need anyone else. I want to figure it out myself. I'm going to lock myself away and, do it alone. And this was, how can I say, if I had done that through this rock bottom period, it might have destroyed me. I really needed support of people around me, and that required me to let go of trying to look a certain way, trying to look like I've got my shit together, trying to look perfect, trying to look like I've figured it all out, and just going, I need to ask for help. And funnily enough, I mean, this is a little side note, but I literally had to relearn that again in the last couple of weeks. Maybe I'll circle back to this story, but um, asking for help and going through that period, it meant that when I put myself out there, I have friends, close friends, I have family, I have people that were looking out for me, that cared about me, but most of all, just putting myself out there, that was part of what allowed me to start accepting myself, because I had, themes again of like not being enough, not being good enough, and so on and so forth, or trying to, have my shit together, and coming face to face with the part of myself that was, that I was upset, that needed care, that needed support, the part that needed to be vulnerable to essentially the kid inside, right? I had to look at that version of myself, and instead of just rejecting it and basically being like, oh, toughen up, you be strong, like you don't, weakness is, vulnerability is weakness. We don't do that. It was like, no, okay, I need to allow that part of myself to, to have its voice, have its say, and then accept it, and then accept myself and be like, that's okay.
How did you get to that point though? Because you see it all the time. Oh, vulnerability is strength, and
Mm.
people will say this stuff. But it's one
Yeah.
thing someone saying it, but then how do you actually go from resisting it to actually taking it on? Was it through just like countless self-help books, podcasts, or was it just common sense at that point?
I could tell you exactly what it was. So I've been in personal development and self-help for a long time, at this point, we're probably talking like, I don't know, 16, 17 years to some degree. I'll go through phases here and there. And then I start my first business, 2016, and I'm like hardcore personal development and all that stuff. And over the years, I'd learned, I picked up a lot of like tools and strategies and, ways of working on this stuff. But no matter everything that I'd ever been through, I'd never really got face to face with the raw, gritty core, the pain, the thing, the thorn that was at the center of it all that was driving the subconscious belief. So to answer your question, there was a tool that I use. It's a journaling process, and it's based on the work by Byron Katie. And what that essentially does in a nutshell is you identify a trigger. So that would be essentially an emotion, and it's something you feel, right? In your gut, in your heart, basically between this, stand up a little bit, like between that bit there, right? So anything that you feel in here. So it might be like a thought triggers you to feel I'm not good enough, and you feel anxious, or like, the thought of, oh, I've got no money in my bank account. How am I going to pay my bills this month? You feel fear. It might be the thought of reaching out and asking for help. It might make you feel sick to your stomach. Yeah, I don't want to do that. That's not me. It makes me like, oh, recoil. So you identify a trigger, something that triggers an emotional response in your body, and then you follow that thread. So let's say it was the record of asking for help, right? You go, okay, I felt something. So you could write in a journal. You literally go, thought of asking for help. And then from there, you start to dig. So you write statements following meanings and judgments. This is the key. You look for the meanings, you look for the judgments. The meaning would be, if I ask for help, it means I'm worthless, I'm not good enough, I'm pathetic, I'm this, I'm that. Whatever the story is, you dig through the meanings. And the judgments would often be external. So like, people who ask for help are weak, or it could be reflected internally. If I ask for help, I'm weak, right? So meanings and judgments. And what you do when you dig and you dig and you dig, you eventually start to find a core belief where it really begins hitting something deep inside you. And again, you're using that to guide you. The more you start feeling like, oh, don't go there, don't go there. We know we don't go there. That really hurts. We're not going to go there. That's exactly where you need to go. And once you dig and you find the core belief. So let's say at the core, it was something like, my dad left me because I was never going to be good enough, or something like that, right? So that the driving belief at the core of it all. You then go through a process, this is the process of the work to position the belief from different angles and then essentially reframe the belief. That's the gist of what you do. So I did this process, mate, for probably every single night for almost 30 days straight for, 2 to 3 hours a night. It was literally like lock myself away, do this, ask for help during the day, in the evening, do this. And it was freaking traumatic. Like, it's so painful. Every time you go into one of these, you're getting taken back to like your most painful memories. But it's the only way that I found to really find like what's going on and then dig it out. Right. So that was it. That was the process that I used.
Mm. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? I
Mm.
think sometimes though, when you push something down for so long and it's from, it could be tens of years ago,
Yeah.
sometimes. I find sometimes the challenge can be actually finding what that actually is. And I know for me, because I never taught myself to express my emotions, right? So
Right.
I would suppress it all the time. And so even now, even with all the knowledge and lessons I've experienced, I'll be like, right, okay, I'm going to feel now. And then it's like, my body's just, my body's just learned to like, just stop it. So it's like, even when I try and just feel an emotion, sometimes there's still a blockage there. So just,
I'll tell you one thing, mate, just on that, because it's a good point. And I think, so I mentioned going through everything all at once and then the breakup. So the breakup was like the real raw emotional part of it. And what that did is it just brought everything to the surface. The business stuff was heavy. It was hard. It was challenging. I felt, there's a lot of, obviously, stuff that came out of it, but the rawness of going through a breakup is what brought everything to the surface. And so, we can do this journaling process all the time, right? And it is of course valuable, but if you're doing it when you're going through hell, you will dig out more in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks than you would in 2 years normally, because it's all literally right there. Everything you hit is like, oh, pain. It's like the surface, and you end up like bursting into tears in your room on your own while you dig it out. But yeah, that's the time to go for it. It's like, it's a golden opportunity disguised in, a very difficult time.
this is a theory I've been looking into for myself as well. I think whenever there is like a tinge of sadness for whatever reason, I think sometimes that can be a blessing in a way, because it's like, okay,
Yeah.
great. Now I can actually explore this stuff and I'm more sensitive to it. And then there's also kind of the more kind of surface level reasons why I like it as well. So when I'm feeling sad, when those days do happen, I find that I can actually connect with my core messaging in my business a lot more, because I can actually feel a lot of the emotions that I'm speaking about and trying to speak about. And usually it will create something great out of it. So I think it can be a wicked opportunity to explore all these areas of your life. And I remember some advice I got from a mentor where I was talking about, at the time I was working for a different company, and I was saying this stuff, and I said, oh, I'm not so sure. I'm probably just saying it because I'm tired, or I haven't slept much, or I'm annoyed. And he's like, if you're saying it, it's always been there. It's always been there, but it's only been brought up to the surface because you've got less layers of the ego to get through, perhaps. So I think we have got all these hidden stuff, which if you look after yourself and you're, I say, living in alignment, you might not actually realize, because
Right.
it's not brought up to the surface. So I find that part pretty interesting as well.
Yeah. I think everything goes in cycles, right? Nothing is permanent, change is inevitable, and you're going to have the challenging times that give you the contrast and then appreciate the good times. And, it's like, again, if we can just sort of recognize that and approach the challenges with a state of more openness and surrender instead of resistance and friction, and just allow that to, whatever needs to come up to come up, and also do it without judgment and so on and so forth. I think you can stay out of the trap of, what do you call it? Maybe something like toxic positivity, like, everything's fine, the grass is greener, like it's all good, even though everything's falling apart. And instead just accept it for what it is and be like, look, that's okay. It's a difficult time. What's it here to teach me? What's this going to give me for the next expansion period? You know? So,
I think
yeah.
the best balance I've found with that has been, okay, not entertaining the thoughts which are quite negative, not entertaining them. So actually having that awareness to go, no, I'm not going to delve into that because I know I'm dysregulated. That's been my approach. Was the whole, because I think sometimes it can be misconstrued, like you said. Oh, okay, no, but I listened to The Secret and it said that I can't. Oh, I've got, I've got to be in a positive state of mind the whole time. But I think, yeah, there's nuances to it. There's depending on where you're at. But I'm intrigued. I want to hear about your current state now, because as you suggested, when you've hit rock bottom, and you commit to it, and you can go into your cave and you can spend 2 to 3 hours doing shadow work and exploring yourself deeper. I think that's fantastic. But what I've found now is, especially with entrepreneurship, if you're always working and always busy and you've always got stuff to do, you might not make that time for yourself to go deeper.
Yeah.
So for me, for example, sometimes it will have to be, I'll have to take 3 days off. It could be every month, it could be every 2 months if things are really busy and there's a lot going on. And then if I can make those 3 days where I can completely switch off and go deeper, that's the time when I usually do it. But do you find a common trap now is actually because there is so much stuff to do, you don't actually make time for the self-development? It might not be as much of a priority as it was when you were at your lowest point.
Yeah, 100%, mate. It's a current theme right now. I mentioned that kind of relearning the lesson of asking for help. That was a recent theme because although 2025 has been an epic year. So you mentioned, actually, I think it was just before we started the recording, talking about relationships and the difference between a healthy relationship and how that looks. And the relationship I'm in now is for sure the healthiest relationship I've ever been in. She's incredible. She's so supportive. She's funny story on that. We actually we only met this year in Bali, January 2025, and both of us went through an incredibly difficult 2023. Both went through rock bottom, even though she's in LA, I was in London at the time, and we ended up writing like the list of what we want in a partner. But it wasn't just what we want them to be. I also wrote, how do I want to feel when I'm with her, and then what do I want the relationship to look like as well. So it was, who is she? How do I want to feel? What do I want the relationship to look like as well? And she wrote a similar list. And we actually compared those lists back from 2023 recently. And she is every single one of like 34 points that I wrote down on my list, and similar for me for her list as well. And it's like, so having her in my life through 2025, like, yeah, there's been challenges and so on in business, and coming out the other side of rock bottom, obviously finances have still been like a challenge as I've started up my new business that I'm doing right now. And, one of the things I've, again, come face to face with is like the little supply of money that I did have has been like dwindling and dwindling and dwindling and pretty much run out. And then I won my first client a few days ago, my new AI business that I started, thanks, for helping digital marketing agencies with their sales and marketing strategy. And so one of the themes that's come out of me, let's say, creating the results in business, but also, as you said, making time for doing the work and like looking after myself from a sort of a mindset perspective, like going into the personal growth and shadow work and finding space for that, is definitely taken a back seat in some areas. And Amy, girlfriend, like there's certain things that she, let's say she's fantastic at being supportive, while also we complement each other so well that we can bring out the best of each other. And so there's like things that I'd reflect and she'd reflect, and like we talk about them, about how maybe, I needed to sort of be more like emotional and open, how I closed down, create a disconnection. And, we talk about what's happening for her, what comes up for her. And we have this healthy communication around it. And that's a prime example of a shift that I needed to make about putting myself out there and asking for help, which I then did 2 weeks ago. Went to a mastermind event, made a bunch of connections. One of them led to a really epic referral. It's actually where I met Gil as well, Gil Petersil. So he was at that same event. And that putting myself out there and asking the founder of the mastermind for help, and how he invited me to the mastermind, then connected a bunch of dots. How the guy that ended up referring me to the client, that's like a whole other thing. But yeah, for sure, mate. It's so important to keep doing the work, even when you're in hustle mode, I think.
Yeah, definitely so. And I'm keen to touch upon this healthy communication you have now with your partner. And by the way, I love that story from 2023, because in a similar vein, I remember looking at myself, deciding that I wanted to get into a relationship, a healthy
Yeah.
one. And then I remember listing the qualities that she would have. And then I remember thinking, okay, what do I need to possess? What characteristics do I need to then attract that into my life? I presume it was a similar process for you, right?
Very much so. Very much so. Yes. Getting clear about what you're looking for in a partner, and then getting clear about, your own sort of self-worth and boundaries as well. But ultimately, if I hadn't gone through the 2023 and 2024 that I did and done all of that deep work on myself, I wouldn't have been the person that she was looking for. And again, it's not from a place of like, comparison or ranking or something like that. It's just from a place of as more authenticity and being true to who you are, coming back to who you are. And examples of like, patterns that I think we're all familiar with, as men, we can go into things like, nice guy, for example, like people pleasing if possible. We can go into obviously disconnecting ourselves, shutting down. So we don't want to show all aspects of ourselves. Go into like, let's say wounded masculine, so like over macho alpha, because you don't want to, appear in any way emotional or vulnerable. It's like, I must be strong. I can't be anything other than that. And again, it's like all these themes that I think you need to sort of delve into and explore what's going on under the surface, and then be able to let them go, and then just get into a place of like, I'm okay being myself as a man, whatever that looks like. And, have much less of a need to look a certain way than I would have done before. And that it meant that I could be in the space where I could communicate and express myself in the way that she's looking for in a partner. And again, she said, like, again and again and again, she's like, you're the most healthy masculine guy that I've ever been with, she said. So it works both ways. And yeah, you've got to, you want to attract that kind of partner, you've obviously got to be what they're looking for as well. You can't be like the one side of a relationship that just doesn't contribute in that way. So yeah, for sure.
Yes. Yeah. And it's amazing, isn't it? I think when you finally meet someone who's your person and you can grow together, like you're willing to just admit to your flaws, it's such a, well, I say it's a crazy experience, but it is when you haven't really experienced that before. And I think actually it can be quite healing because you're both healing together if you're both understanding of each other's patterns. And I think the way I see it is, as long as you're sort of both patient with the other person at different times, because I think
Yeah.
it can deviate. You're going to have different seasons in life. I think if you're committed to the journey together, then I think it can be really exciting. And so even when patterns do play out, you have such an awareness of what's happening that you can always come back to that center. And I think perhaps you, in previous relationships, I presume, because this is a common pattern, perhaps it wasn't even anything. There was no solid base because it's all superficial, and you're showing up as a certain guy. So I'm intrigued to hear what your one was. For me, it was the nice guy. So I was a nice guy essentially, and that's where I learned my lessons, was when those patterns played out in my first interaction. So yeah, was that a similar story for yourself? Because it's usually tied to the relationship with the father. So it was tracing it back to the divorce for me that made me uncover a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there was a couple of, let's say, major themes. There's definitely nice guy elements in specific relationships and specific, let's say, sections of my life as well. I've been more in that kind of energy as opposed to other times. When I was really young, so really young, like younger, I was like 20, maybe 21, first serious relationship. I was a lot more hot-headed. I'd get a lot more, like, I didn't know what, terms like triggered and so on meant. I didn't have the self-awareness to understand, how I was responding and reacting. And so I think it was later on that the more sort of nice guy tendencies will come out, where it'll be more suppression. So instead of just being like, angry or annoyed or whatever, it would be like, oh, well, I'm going to, suppress that. And there was a period, again, this was a personal development thing, where I was like, I would tell myself that I was not controlling my emotions, but I was like, responding calmly. I was responding instead of reacting, right? Which true, and it's a healthy reaction than just having an outburst or whatever, but still it's suppression. It's like I was not honoring how I was feeling, and instead pretending that everything was okay by like, suppressing my true feelings so that I could respond in a, an adult, educated, manner. But it was what I was essentially doing with that was I was not honoring my own needs. I was sacrificing my own needs in order to keep the peace, like, negotiate and manage the conversation and keep the peace. But the problem with that is over time, resentment's going to build up. I'm not being heard because I'm not speaking up. It's, in a way, it's not even really her fault. How was she to know, like, if I'm pissed off by this or that, and that's an angry, and this is triggering, and blah blah blah? If I'm just never really telling her because I'm just trying to, like, be the smart, the sensible personal development guy that's be calm and handle shit together. So that was one thing. And I think the one of the extensions of that as well was also there was shame in there for sure. This is one of the big themes of 2023 and 24. It was becoming okay with accepting all parts of myself, not abandoning parts of myself. There was themes of abandonment, themes of unworthiness, again, not wanting to show parts of myself. And so that what I found to kind of summarize everything was whenever I felt shame, like as an emotion, that would immediately tell me, all right, what's the part of myself that I'm scared to show right now? And what's the fear that's driving that? What do I think is going to happen? And so this healthy relationship with Amy that that we're now in together means that she knows that if she expresses the things within herself to me that are coming up, things she might not want to admit or look at or accept, or things that are uncomfortable, she knows that I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to run. I'm not going to, do any of that myself. She knows that if that's then triggering for me, again, I can communicate about it in that way. And from the same side, in the other direction, from her to me, same thing. I know that I can talk about these things and she's not going to go anywhere. And we can have this communication without judgment, without me needing to hide parts of myself through shame in case, oh, what if she thinks this about me? What if she thinks that about me? And part of that, you can only do that when you reach a space of a level of self-worth within yourself that that even if she does leave, you're still going to be okay. And that's the key, because if you're always fearing, if I say the wrong thing, if I show you the wrong part of myself, if I basically, if I make a mistake, she's going to leave me, then you can never be authentic. And the only way you can be truly authentic is if you're like, look, if me being my authentic self is what causes her to leave, it's going to hurt life, but I'll get through it. And she wasn't the right person for me, if that's the case. And trusting that you'll be all right, then you can be authentic. Then you have that authentic, that genuine connection. She can support you through that. The bond strengthens. I then know she's not going to go anywhere. She then sees all parts of me. And then as a result of that, I'm immediately like this healthy masculine. I'm back in my masculinity. She gets to respect me for facing these things to the man, and vice versa for her. We have, for example, jokes like, she'll be like triggered about something that comes up. And it's, the joke is that we can communicate about it and talk about it without making it mean, things about the other person, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Separating yourself from the trigger in a way, even though it's a part of you, it's acknowledging it for what it is. And you mentioned a great point there in terms of rebuilding up that self-worth. I think a part of it is just learning to just, okay, you're yourself, and like nothing's actually happened here. But then there's also the element of trust as well. And I think trust and faith plays a huge part in every single element of our lives. Just knowing that, okay, this is the right decision, or this is the way things are going to play out, and knowing that you will be fine anyway, knowing that you're always going to be all right. And I do want to touch upon this point as well, because I can really relate to it. I think when you, because there's the first period, right, where you go deep into self-development, and then you start getting back on your feet. But then, like you said, you can fall into this trap of wanting to be this embodied man, because you start hearing about, okay, what healthy masculine looks like.
Yeah.
And I know in my journey, I really wanted to show up as this safe masculine man.
Right.
And it would be a struggle sometimes, because when sometimes I did notice there were still wounds there that I needed to explore, it was almost like, not an identity crisis, but you start thinking, oh, like, what if I'm not this embodied man? What if I'm not this person that I think I am or striving to be? So I think you can fall into another trap of trying to be perfect, which is the whole trap you escaped in the first place, that can kind of come back around a bit. So it's, I love that you mentioned that, because I can really relate to that. And the whole part of the journey is, again, you got to go back, okay, accept that I'm an imperfect man, and I'm committed to the journey and trust that I will get there eventually.
Yeah. I know it's something very interesting. I do remember this pretty clearly, tail end of 2024. And I was going through, let's call it layers of self shadow work, that kind of thing. And I had something along these lines where I was like, oh, I realized something about myself and I let go of something. I think that one was something to do with abandonment. I mean, shame was baked into a lot of it, but I think it was something to do with the theme of abandonment. And I remember having a conversation with my dad at the time. And we've always had a pretty good relationship, but it would often be like quite surface level. We'd struggle to have really deep conversations. And I spoke with him for the first time. It was from the perspective of, I said to him, you don't need to do anything. I'm not expecting anything from you in this conversation. I just want to share with you how I feel. Take it how you will. It's okay. This isn't, I'm not looking to get anything. I just want to share how I'm feeling and things that have come up for me as a way to just speak it and let it go. And he was like, okay, that's cool. And so he listened. And I talked to him about, the struggles that I was going through after losing my business and how I felt, when I had the business and things were going well. I noticed I felt so much pride about how you see me as a success now and all of this kind of thing. And it felt like I'd lost that. And, there was a lot of things I said about how I was feeling. And the end result of that conversation was he responded in a way that honestly, I didn't think he would. And it's not because of anything that he is, but because of in myself, for some reason, I'd obviously been telling myself for so long that I need the money to be successful. And so, why would he say something like, look, I've never ever, seen your worth as connected to money. I was obviously happy that you were doing very well, but, I always knew that you'd figure it out. And even if things were difficult, it never devalued you as my son, or, things like this. And I was like, fuck, damn, like all this time I'm telling myself these stories about how I should be. And I'm the one that's causing the disconnection. And he's the one that's like, sees these things about me. And so the point of telling this story is that, and I've had this shift after this conversation. And I remember walking outside of my place. I was in Ubud in Bali at the time. I'm in Canggu now, but I was in Ubud. I remember walking outside of my place and walking down the street and just noticing little things like I was looking people in the eye again. I hadn't even noticed I'd stopped looking people in the eye. So I've been dealing with this stuff like suppressing, and I didn't even notice. I started looking people in the eye again. I was like, oh, damn, and saying hi to people. I was like, oh, people are really friendly. Like, of course they are. In Bali, everyone's friendly. And so what happened after that, and this is to, the point you made there, is I was like, oh, I'm a new person. I've like let go of this version of myself. And now I get to live life as this new version. And then within 24 hours, the ego had slipped back in and said, you're this new version now. This is how you should act. And I started feeling shame when I wasn't acting like that. And I was like literally 24 hours, the ego's back in, it hijacks the new identity and then starts again. If you're not this, you're not good enough. And I'm like, yeah, still constant journey. So yeah, 100% relate, mate. And it's definitely something to be, you've got to have the self-awareness to go, okay, I see what's happening. Let it go. I don't need to, be this all the time. It's fine. And so on, Yeah.
Well, it ties in with the earlier point, isn't it? That we've got to kind of make an aspect of self-development. I don't even know if that's the right term of it. Just self-care, just a part of our routine. Yeah. Maybe even now I've recently hosted a 14-day challenge where we've all just picked something we want to do consistently for 14 days. And the one thing I put in has been, right, strict time in my bed and journaling, reviewing the day, just reviewing the day every single time. Because when we don't review what's happening and we do prioritize work all the time and other activities, it can go unnoticed. But again, the ego there is a great point. So just reflecting on the day, okay, what actually cropped up for me? Because just having that every day, even if it's like 10, 15 minutes, I think can make such a big difference. It can stop us from going back into these old patterns for sure. So I think it all ties in well together for sure.
Definitely, mate. Yeah, definitely. Great point.
I'm keen to hear about the independence piece as well, because again, I think a lot of our factors in childhood, and again, it might relate to the relationship to the father. I think a lot of the time we do end up going into entrepreneurship and really working hard towards goals is because we have that driver. We have that really big drive to achieve something, and it might be driven by a false belief, like you've suggested. Okay, my worth is tied by how well I do in my business. Sometimes it's subconscious. as well. You
Yeah.
don't even think it's the main driver. I think it can be actually quite a positive characteristic. And I love the way you've tied in your personal responsibility and accountability there. It's your own sort of
Yeah.
projection of the world. But we always, I think often in the self-help space or the growth phase of our lives, I think we always like to, or there's a tendency to only talk about the negatives or drawbacks of our childhoods. But then I look at mine and I think, you know what? I'm the hardest worker in the room. I am quite independent. Of course, you can go into hyper independency, which we've discussed, but I'm very driven, and I think it's important we actually focus on maybe the positive outcomes of whatever our experience was and how it sort of shapes us to become the person we are today. So I'm intrigued to hear obviously how you reflect on that,
Mm.
but then also have you found that you've noticed hyper independence in and of yourself as well, even now, like wanting to just be alone a lot of the time? Because I've realized I love my own company. I think I've just learned to love it. But I've noticed sometimes I'm like, okay, maybe this is introversion, but is this a bit of the, is this a bit on the extreme end? So I'm intrigued to hear your point of view or for yourself
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, for sure, mate. I mean, you could answer this in the way of like, balance is key, and so on and so forth. But I think, I mean, something that's probably more relevant is that challenge is what shapes us, right? Like we all want the traits, we want to be patient, we want to be kind, we want to be, productive, we want to be independent, we want to be, pick your adjective, whatever relates to you. We want to be this thing. But at the end of the day, the only way that we get to be those things is by going through challenges that sculpt, that craft that particular aspect of us. And so to your point, I reflect on the things that I'm most proud of about myself, what I've achieved, what I've done. And even if I just park the material for a second and just look at like, who I am from a personality perspective, from a values perspective. And the things that I value most about myself have come from the hardest times. They always have. And so if that's the case, I've always, for quite a long time now, looked at the hard times. And I even, when I was shooting the YouTube videos in 2023, going through rock bottom, I was saying this on the videos while I was going through hell. I was like, I know that this is going to shape me in ways that I don't see yet and I don't appreciate yet. But for that reason, you have to embrace the challenges because they're part of what comes on the other side. Everything is in duality. Everything is in contrast. We all want the good times, and we don't want the bad times or the hard times. And even good and bad, like they're labels we give it. That's good, that's bad. Says who? Says you. Why? Well, because it's painful. Okay, but if that's the very reason that you get everything you ever wanted, is that not good? Well, suddenly it's like, how do you define these things? And so, through that logic, I for sure haven't mastered this, but I try to remember it. And gratitude has been something that doesn't come naturally to me. And honestly, I don't put enough time into crafting it every day or practicing it every day. But I have noticed that almost in a contradictory sense, I find it easier to be grateful when I'm going through hell because I'm more face to face with the fact that this is the challenge right now. It's right here, right now. And going through this is going to give me everything that I want. And I believe that and I know that. So it's easier for me to be grateful in the hard times personally than it is for me to be grateful when everything's going great because I'm not brought face to face with it to that extreme. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. I agree wholeheartedly. And like you said, I think a lot of people say they want the life that they want, but then are they
Yeah.
prepared to go through the challenges in order to get the life that they want? It's as simple as that. If you want that thing, then okay, go through some challenges, some hurdles, see how much you really want it. And I think that's a
Yeah.
good indicator of of that, of finding out how much we truly want something. So yes, 100% agree with that. And I'm also, it surprised me hearing that you were documenting your journey at the time. I've always found that I can document on my challenges
Yeah.
afterwards because I've learned the lessons and I can speak from a grounded place. But I think that, yeah, but to speak about the challenges as you're going through them, I think is, yeah, it's commendable. Yeah. And it's something you don't really see so much these days. So if the YouTube videos are still up there, I'd love to put
Yeah.
them in the description of this episode. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, for sure, mate. They're still there. It's just on the channel. It's called Dealing with the Emotional Pain of Rock Bottom, I think. But they're still pretty recent. I'm not sure how much recently. Um, yeah, definitely, mate. And I remember when I shot them, I was like, look, exactly what you said. Most people do it after the fact, and they're like, 12 months ago, I went through a really difficult time. But the thing that I remember clearly thinking at the time was that when someone is going through hell, it's actually not that useful to see someone that's like, oh, they're out the other side, and now they're talking like, oh, okay, they went through it and got out the other side. There's a bit of you that's like, okay, that's good that they did that, but they don't really understand how I'm feeling now. Like they're there, they're not like me right now. They're not going through this right now. And I remember when I shot these videos, I was like, look, I feel like this will be more valuable to a lot of people than anything I could ever shoot after the fact. Again, golden opportunity. If I'm going through hell, let's can use it. Let's like shoot it right now, share about it. And I even, to this day, my website at the moment for the new business that I've launched to digital marketing agencies to help with the AI with their strategies. That is on my site from like an authenticity perspective. Like this is who I am. This is where I've come from. So instead of putting like success stories, I'm like, well, I've actually failed, and that's one of my biggest reasons that I now am who I am, and like those videos are kind of at the centerpiece of that. Didn't intend it at the time, didn't know what they'd be used for, but it's just one of many benefits of shooting those.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. It's such a wicked perspective. Really, really cool. And
Thanks, man.
yeah, I think because it's such a different perspective. Because I remember chatting with a digital marketing specialist, and she was saying, share from the scar, not the wound, because otherwise it's dumping and stuff. But I think there's something really cool about if you're in that state and saying, okay, you know what? I've been here before. I'm going to get out of it. This is just follow my journey. I think that's really awesome. And to make it part of your story and to show that side of you. Yeah. Really, really cool. What we'll do, we'll move into the closing traditions of the podcast.
Sounds good.
The first two questions are routine. I ask them at the end of every episode. And then the third one is asked by a member of the Growth Voyage community.
Cool.
The first one is a song recommendation.
Oh, for me to like, what am I picking a song like a karaoke song or something like that?
It could be any song you like. It can have meaning to it. It could be something catchy. It could be whatever's ringing true to you at the moment.
Okay, well, there's two that immediately come to mind. So, I mean, one is the karaoke song, like any Robbie Williams, Angels. It's got to be. It's the go-to karaoke song. But the more relevant one, you know my buddy Daniel Lawson. I think he was on your podcast a little while ago, wasn't he? And he hosts the Give It All event in Farley in Canggu. And I spoke at his event maybe I want to say like 2 months ago or something like that. And then at the end of the event, he wanted me to come on the stage and do a closing song for that chapter, that season of Give It All. And I ended up singing Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer. And I had so many people in the room just absolutely going for it because you cannot half-ass Bon Jovi. You have to let it rip. So yeah, let's say Living on a Prayer because it's tied to like we have a connection there, Daniel Lawson and that event.
Yes. Yeah. That's very ambitious. That's a proper tune. That is, yeah.
I think it's on the Give It All YouTube. I think he's got it up there. If you're curious.
Put it in the description for the Bon Jovi enthusiasts. Wicked. I like that. The second one is a book recommendation.
Man, there's probably an absolute ton. What would be a recent book recommendation? I mean, I already recommended the work by Byron Katie. Like that was one that obviously helped get me through that incredibly challenging time. Over the years, I mean, Tony Robbins, always a classic. Joe Dispenza, I love Joe Dispenza's stuff. Various habits books like Atomic Habits, Power of Now is like a more spiritual book. Eckhart Tolle, Rich Dad Poor Dad, classic finance book. And then you got like 7 Habits. I've used that quite a lot over the years. Think and Grow Rich, of course. But I think if there's any like specific standout that has real sort of meaning or sentimental value based on our conversation today, it's probably got to be the work. I mean, that's what we've talked about, and that's the process that helped get me through rock bottom. So I'll go for that one.
Wicked. Yeah, we'll put them all in the description. And it's funny, isn't it? Like some of them are just classics. It's like, okay, yeah, this is like the must reads, and then they're like your go-to. Definitely put those in.
Nice.
The final question, and it actually ties in really well with our conversation today, funnily enough, but it's from Chris Mercer, and he asks, what belief did you have to kill in order to become the man you are today?
Oh, oh man. Okay. What belief did I have to kill in order to become the man I am today? And we talked about things of abandonment, self-worth, talked about nice guy stuff, talked about shame. What beliefs did I have to kill? There's there's a few. I mean, when I was going through this journaling process, I remember it was in the space of about 3 to 4 weeks. I think I rooted out something like 11 or 12 like core beliefs that were running the show underneath the surface. Some of them were around life, not being lovable, not being good enough. People always, it was something like people always leave me in the end. That was a big one. I think of the one specific one that really was running the show. It was something around like I can never. It was something like I can never show who I really am or people leave. I think it was something like that because that was what allowed me to get into that space of authenticity and let go a lot of the shame that was baked into all of that. Um, and I think it was through that being able to shift through that belief and show different parts of myself to different people and also show parts of myself to myself. Because that's another thing. Like not wanting to look at parts of myself because I didn't like what I was, what I would see. Um, and so, yeah, I'd say I was struggling to like verbalize it, but it's something around that. It's something around like not hiding away parts of myself or having to hide parts of myself or people leave. Because the feeling when I think of the feeling around it, it's like a little kid like hiding in the corner, like don't look at me kind of thing, and that was very significant. And it drove a lot of the other stuff that I'd, got over the top of it. I'll be successful, achieve this, do this, do this, do this. Because don't look at that part. Look over here. So yeah, that's the answer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a wicked answer. And I think what I like about it is that it is a belief. It's not fact. It's a
Yeah.
belief system that you've taken on from however many years ago that is not a true reality, and we can create our own reality. And I think you're a wicked example of that, brother. And I think it's also cool that, even 2 years ago, you're in that place, rock bottom,
Yeah.
didn't have a partner, you just come off the back of a relationship. You've clearly learned lessons there. And within 2 years, which actually isn't a long period when you think about it in the grand scheme of things. So whatever age you are now, in 2 years, you can make a huge difference to your life. I think you can make a huge shift in 3 months to half a year even as well, just by
Yeah.
putting in the work, right? Just as you did.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, and there was different stages to that shift as well. I mean, it was September 2023 when shit really hit the fan. But then I was in Bali by January 2024, and that was like that first 3 month period after it. There was like this very intense digging deep, going through the stuff that I've talked about on this podcast. And then in Bali was kind of the next chapter where a lot of themes continued in 2024. Again, I was kind of working through a lot of stuff, but it wasn't like hellfire intense type level. Um, so, I mean, even as you say, even 3 months after the fact, my life was completely different and I was in so much of a better place. Like, sure, I hadn't figured out what I wanted to do next. I was like dabbling in this venture, doing this venture, started this business, made a bit of money. Like, I don't want to do that. That was kind of what 2024 looked like. So it's more like exploring and figuring stuff out. But yeah, for sure that after 3 months, 4 months, I was like, oh, I'm in such a better place than I was, before. And then 2025 has been the year when stuff's really, started to get some momentum. So yeah.
Wicked. Yes, definitely different seasons, brother.
Yeah, man.
Excited to see where it takes you next. Hopefully catch you in
Thank you, man.
person sometime
Yes.
too.
Yeah, let me know when you're back out here. I don't think I'm planning to go to the UK anytime just in the next few months. But mate, if you're back out this way, hit me up. It'll be a pleasure.
Will do, brother. Where can the listeners find you if they want to connect with you, check out the work that you're up to?
Yes, www.danholloway.co. That's DANHOLLOWAY.co. All my socials are on. The business that I'm up to at the moment is on there. It's kind of like they call it a personal CV site focusing on the results that I help business owners create. So yeah, just check me out there and all my links are on it.
Wicked. All in the description, brother. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate you. Enjoy your day.
Cheers, brother.